All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. And first and foremost, happy Foster Care Awareness Month. It's truly a privilege and an honor to be on season three, episode two. We are pushing. The goal. I'm gonna put it out there. The goal is 50 episodes this season, and I'm gonna take a little break. Because I'm going to start, let me not say attempt because my mind was going to say attempt, but I'm going to start writing my book and getting all this down. But, Lord willing, we make it there. But without further ado, if you don't know who I am and you just skip one and two, season, and you just came to three, that's okay because we love you anyway. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent a little bit over 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system, starting out on the JJ side and then aging out in foster care. Started advocacy and working professionally within advocacy at age 15, advocating for individuals in my unit, now advocating for individuals within this nation. So I've been doing this for a decade now, getting ready to be 26. So I'm pushing it. But without further ado, because y'all didn't come here to hear from me, and that's okay. I want to introduce my guest. Well, not me introduce, have my guest introduce himself.
Yes, hi. My name is Victor Sims. I grew up actually in Florida's foster care system. I spent a total of 12 years in our foster care system prior to being adopted. Got adopted right before I turned 12, went in at 3 months. Shortly after that, I, wanted to realize like I wanted to like continue to like do more within the foster care arena. Got into some advocacy locally, then statewide, and then nationally. Then went into the field to work as a case manager, working my way up to an executive director and founding my own program, and then became a management consultant. And then in the middle of this month, in the middle of May, I'll become entering as a senior associate with the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So it's been a long journey, but it's been a great journey.
Awesome. Well, just for that little spiel, I know you got a wealth of knowledge for us today, and I'm excited to hear it, and you kind of chimed into my first question. How about you let us know, and help us build a timeline. When did this work begin for you? You spoke about having some experience, so to whatever comfortability, feel free to let us know.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting on how I ended up joining child welfare as a job and as a practitioner. I was actually working at McDonald's when I first graduated. I went to college actually to continue to work at McDonald's and go the corporate route as an IO psychologist. And then I realized I would have to relocate to Chicago, and good old Florida boy who has never seen snow could not imagine spending a season where there was snow. So I was like, well, this isn't going to work. I'm just going to stay at McDonald's down here and figure it out. And then I was working on this curriculum with the Center for the Study of Social Policy. And in that moment, I realized that one of the questions is like, what is a problem that we wanted to solve in the world? And I realized it wasn't like the problem I wanted to solve wasn't at McDonald's. It was within the foster care system, within the child welfare system as a whole. And so I remember that day I was like, I'm going home and I'm going to like apply to work in child welfare. And I did. And then everything like fell in line, started working. And then what made me know I was like at the right place was at that same time I requested all my records from when I was a child in care. And I didn't read them whenever I first started working in it because I just thought that was going to be just too much. But after I'd been working in it for like 7 or 8 months, I started reading my file. and recognized that I was in the same unit, working in the same unit that I was as a child, that I was in as a child. And so I was like, well, if that's not a sign that I'm in the right place, I don't know what else is. And so
Right.
just the idea that like going full circle, from going
Mhm.
from a client to a colleague, is something that like it has been um, remarkable and eye-opening, more than anything else within traveling in this journey of child welfare leadership development.
Mhm.
And then I got to a point where I had been working in the industry as a direct service practitioner for a while, led the program in uh, St. Petersburg. And was like, like, I don't know if this is what I want to do long term. Like, I feel like I can like grow my footprint by doing something else,
Mhm.
and impact more lives beyond just the ones in Florida. And so I ended up becoming a management consultant with public knowledge, and had the pleasure of working there for 2.5 years before making the transition that I'm making now to join the Annie Casey Foundation. And it's all focused on how do we transform the system. I didn't want to just see how do we just uh, pragmatically improve it, but to really say like, what are the things that we no longer need in our system? What are the things
Mhm.
that can be replaced by our systems? What are the things that we just need to like re-examine and relook at within our system? And so those are um, some of the factors that we had to take into consideration whenever I was, charting my path.
Awesome, awesome. That's a journey right there.
Yeah.
And I can relate to, going back to a place where you were once held. I spent most of my time in residential. So like for me, it's like, all right, I'm back in here, let me do my time and get out, you know. I really do
Yes.
say that, y'all. I really enjoyed going back and working, as a youth care worker, but I realized for myself, working in direct care and as a youth care worker, it was a lot of bureaucracy, not a lot of change happening, a lot of wrongs. And as a person with lived experience, it was driving me crazy every day to come in and to be speaking about something and to be hushed a lot of times,
Yeah.
or to be speaking then say something and then nothing happens. So
Mhm.
I was like, okay, for me, I'm a person of faith. So I was like, all right, God, where we going? What do you want me to do? Because I can't keep,
Yeah.
staying right here. So I can relate to that. And I also had an experience where one of my I guess night shift workers where a place I was living at when I was in residential. I ended up going to work for a place, being promoted and being her boss. So it was just really, it was really crazy. But
Mhm.
also it was really cool because he was like one of my favorite staff, so but that was definitely an experience in itself. I want to navigate here because I feel like you can touch on this very well. So getting that realization that you wanted to go into this realm and navigating it, and having your own personal obstacles and hurdles, I'm sure. Um, when did you realize, as an individual with lived experience, self care and mental health having an importance or not having an importance in your own life?
Yeah, that is the $1,000,000 question. I would say somewhere in 2026 or 2027 is where I hope to really figure it out by. I think it's a challenging dilemma,
Hmm.
because um, what I've realized is definitely self care looks different for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, People used to really frown upon what they call overworking.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is like one way that I believe I do care for myself is by like solving problems that really bother me. And I think like that's how I take care of myself is like,
Hmm.
whereas most people are like, no, I need to take a moment, like a step back. And so I've learned to really start articulating uh, how what may look like overworking is
Mhm.
actually me taking care of myself, because I'm like, if I can't like really work continuously for this problem, like it brings this like calm and ease, because I'm like, you know what, like it may take 10 years. I may be planting a seed where I may not see the tree grow.
Mhm.
Um, but at least tending the soil and putting time behind it has always been something that I've valued. I think self-care uh, is difficult. And I mean, Michael, if you and I just like are like just the whole process of from client to colleague, like there is a completely different dilemma there,
Yeah.
because there's uh, the fear of tokenization.
Yeah.
There's uh, the fear of being infantilized. Like there's all these different fears.
Mhm.
The fears of not truly adequately being developed and provided the leadership skills or the
Yeah.
professional skills needed in order to advance. Um, because I mean, currently most roles where lived experience or lived expertise is a forefront. They're not leadership positions. They're not a
Yeah.
deputy commissioner. They're not
Yeah.
a director of anything. Like they're typically just, you know what, we're going to have you do this and run our youth council.
Mhm.
And that's as far like that's as high up as leadership as lived experience really goes. And so if
Mhm.
we're really wanting to um, revolutionize and challenge, what does it mean to have lived experts or clients becoming colleagues and
Mhm.
colleagues of the future,
Mhm.
decision makers of the futures and leaders of the future. um, it takes a reframe of even our workforce system, which isn't something that's really being discussed right now.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I recently, the two things you just said struck out to me. I recently, with one of my good friends, Carrie Ward, she runs like
Well,
Foundation
I love
Success
Carrie.
Michigan. She's with
Yes,
Educate Tomorrow as well, out there in
yes.
Florida. So all about her. We did a meeting with the state of Indiana and talking to them about employing individuals' lived experience and what does that look like from a employer standpoint,
Yeah,
and offering feedback and what have you. And for me, that was revolutionary. That a state was intentionally wanting to speak to individuals and experts. About how do we employ these individuals, how do we maintain our um whatever employer culture, but also not imply liability or what have you, but employ individuals and be empathetic, and understanding of different circumstances and factors, and I'm not gonna go too far in detail, but I was happy with being able to do that. I'm not sure where they are at, but that is something I will speak to. But also, you mentioned something else about uh, not really seeing lived experience and position of change, or well, let me not say that position of leadership, and well, I'm gonna say it because there like I feel like there's a different level when we're speaking of change, when we're advocates or consultants and stuff like that. I'm talking about when I say change. So whoever gonna get at me, y'all can be mad at me, whatever. Um, Change in the factor of being an executive director, being an associate executive director, being a director of Department of Human Services,
yeah,
being a director, in
yeah,
all these different capacities, of leadership, being a person where the buck stops,
yeah,
to say the least, and I don't know, it may be some people that have not denounced themselves. I don't want to, because I don't want to assume, but also like for me as a living person, I haven't seen that representation.
yeah,
So like for me as a person who's wanting to reach that heights, wanting to build, because I don't see it within the field. Like I'm an individual, I'm like, okay, I guess I got to start it up myself. I don't see it here, plus being within these agencies, it doesn't feel like my voice is actually being heard. It feels
yeah,
much, even at
yeah,
my level, if I still
yeah,
get feelings of tokenism, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and I've been doing this for a decade. I still get,
yeah,
can you do this for free?
yeah,
And I would love to, support people, but also like, I got rent now, I'm not getting three hots in the cot, and going back and checking in before curfew no more. I have,
yeah,
responsibilities, so and that's something to speak on too. I think I spoke on that last season about, having to be as a lived experience consultant,
yeah,
having to be the person like, okay, at the end of the conversation, so this is my rate, but having those same conversations with individuals who aren't with lived experience, then they're like, okay, this is what we can have, this is what we can pay you, and stuff like that. Having to be that person to bring up the money within the conversation. So there's so many different sectors, but I say all that to come back to my roundabout point. I've been working on trying to build an opportunity for leadership within my state, and advocating about it, and I feel like it's a lane for us as lived experience individuals to become, professionals, get paid for it. It's not, an all beat all position, but peer support, but
yeah,
also on the other end, parent partners. These are paraprofessional positions, where they can be recognized for their experience and with certifications and models and stuff like that. So one thing I've been working on in my state, we have our mental health peer support certification, is building out and explaining that it's important that we have a juvenile peer support certification, a
yeah,
foster care peer support certification. But when I explain this and we have the knowledge, it seems to not be as of importance, but we're also talking about throughout the country and throughout my state about
yeah,
prevention and preservation, but we don't want to involve peer support or parent partners or recognize them. Or one thing that I've faced as a peer support professional is the feeling from caseworkers or social workers within the field that I'm taking their job.
yeah,
So I want to share that, and I want to see what your take is on that, because I know you worked in a professional capacity along other individuals with your expertise, but also with your experience. So what is your take on involving lived experience a little bit more and bringing them to the table where not only is equitable, but it's also, it's also, fair, to say the least.
yeah. Uh, you hit on so many great things that I think we share. Um, w- when I first joined uh, and became a management consultant, I took a salary of something that I thought was equitable. I thought it was what made sense. And as time went on, I found out that like my peers got paid significantly different than I did. Um, and I struggled because I was like, well, why is that? Um, because, Michael, like, yes, I do have lived experience, but I also have experience as a practitioner,
Right.
being in the field, running programs. And I struggled to understand um, why there was a huge disparity, in regards to uh, what I was getting, how I was getting compensated. And I think that happens a lot, like if we were to be at a speaking gig, they'd be like, oh, the keynote, all we can afford is X, Y, and Z. But they could bring one of our, just like I said, like we're former clients, but we're also colleagues of these people. But so like when we think about our other colleagues who may have been directors somewhere or um, secretaries of their children and families, or division directors, or commissioners, or whatever each of the states call them, they can somehow find the money to meet the need for that keynote to come out, right? Um, and I've always found it interesting because I'm like, no, like it's because like you put this price tag that what there's no reason that Vic needs this much money because this lifestyle shouldn't be that high, you know. And then we create these cycles And then you also talked about um, you also talked about um, gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
No problem, no problem. I know I mentioned, the aspect of um, certificates,
Oh yes.
equity, and leadership, opportunities, and also that's a huge thing, because I'm gonna mention this and then I'll pass it back to you. We have to realize college is not for everybody,
Yeah.
you know, but also there is a level, and I believe, former President Barack Obama mentioned it, his foundation has an organization to uplift it, alternative expertise, which also speaks to individuals who have the lived experience, that brings a world of knowledge, within that field, and can also be a huge benefit within multiple different sectors,
Mhm.
and I would say the same aspect, say for instance, you have an individual who, spent time in prison for a long period of time, you
Mhm.
know, reformed their life, came out, got their life together, and they dedicated their life to wanting to change and better the prison system.
Yeah.
They have valuable knowledge because they did 25, 40, some 9 years
Yeah.
within the correctional system. But are we going to say that their knowledge is not valuable
Yeah.
when they have watched, guards come and go? They've watched turnover rates. They've ate the same food. You know what I'm saying? So, like, not to compare, but this is something that's really serious and dear to my heart. The aspect where we're assuming that everyone has to come out with a bachelor's and master's degree, and I do not want to simplify the experience and the time that it has taken to get these degrees, because I think that holds weight and that holds value as well. But equally, experience does too, and a huge population of individuals who come through care, for whatever reason, don't make it to college or can't go to college or can't afford to do college and work at the same time, but they would love to be able to share their knowledge, share their experience, and the capacity that they can help and benefit our system.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's multiple things on that. One, I agree. Not just every person, not every person in foster care, but not every person is going to college, just in our general population. Um, and another thing is, I've always wondered how the bureaucratic system came up with some of these degree structures um, within our industry, within our field, the child welfare space. And while there is always a space for certain levels of education, I don't think every position requires for there to be a high school diploma, a GED, a degree. Like I think there are engagement opportunities that it doesn't need, like you don't have to go to high school or
Mhm.
graduate high school to learn how to engage with children and families in an equitable and in a way of dignity.
Yeah.
I mean, we are still talking right now, how do we engage clients? How do we engage those with lived experience?
Hmm.
Now, when I worked at McDonald's, like I learned on day one what it took to engage our clients, what it meant to engage those with the experiences of coming through McDonald's drive-through, and like basic level engagement.
Hmm.
And I like transferable skill. I used those skills and applied that to the same thing that I did in child welfare, right?
Hmm.
And so I actually say this almost probably all the time. Like I was probably a better social worker because I worked at McDonald's prior to coming into child welfare. Because there used to be a time where social service actually meant, that like if we just think about those two words, service, I mean social first, like social, like it means, to engage, to have conversation, to create
Hmm.
dialogue, right? And then the service means to like go above and beyond to make sure like the experience is great, well taken care of, all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so if you put them both together and you like really think about what social service should be, and then now we're talking about how they're not like social workers, they're not this, they're all case workers. So now we're surprised that people are just working cases and they've forgotten families or they've forgotten children in it, and like, the face for the case is gone, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that has been telling. I think there is a way, like like I've been trying not to um, diminish the movements that's been going on around full transformation and disrupting the system and stuff like that, because I think all of those messages are right still. But I think there's a part of it that's like, let's get back to some of the basics. When people went out to homes to really say like, hey, what's just going on? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And then we take some of those same skills and we'll see better results. You know, I back in like 2019, 2018, I got an award from the American Bar Association, and was named as a reunification hero. And I always told people, I was like, well, it's because I learned how to engage with my parents in a way that kept them with dignity,
Mhm.
right? Like I didn't tell them like, you're wrong. What you did was wrong. And all of this. I said, you know what? Like, what can we do to make you get back to those good moments? And I would
Mhm.
ask them on the onset of the case and just would be like, tell me about the greatest moment you've had with your family, with your daughter, your son, your husband, boyfriend, father's parents, or, what did it mean to have those good moments? What does it mean for you to have a family? Not a
Mhm.
functional family, but like, what does it mean for you to have a family? Because functional families are based off of what society says is functional,
Mhm.
right? And when you listen to like all of those parents, like you hear all of the great things that they did to be great parents. And then we have this one incident that occurred, and all of a sudden, they're a horrible parent.
Yeah.
And I would have to try to tell that story to the court because obviously, like, unfortunately, the investigations isn't putting, oh, one of the great things about mom was she did X, Y, and Z, even though she had inadequate supervision here because she had to work 3 jobs
Yeah.
and the babysitter who she needed didn't
Mhm.
show up, right? Um, and now some like her child ended up walking outside the house,
Yeah.
you know? And so I used to have to like really like learn how to tell the full story because investigations unfortunately usually don't tell the full story when we're doing the petition to remove in court.
Mhm.
It's, what, this is the problem, this is the reason for removal.
Yeah.
What if we did the same thing and said this is the reason where we believe that the family could really stay together? Because you
Mhm.
know what? Although mom, like this incident occurred right here,
Yeah.
there is a possibility that this could occur over here, and like this could strengthen the family. And this is the kind of characteristics we need in order to uplift that family. Because when the
Mhm.
child comes into care, we're going to put that child in a daycare with the foster parents. So why can't we put the child in a daycare with the family of origin, right?
Mhm.
And so those are some of the same things, but like it also is the benefit when it came to like kids sleeping in offices. Michael, like
Mhm.
I had a great opportunity when I worked in St. Petersburg, where I worked with children who slept in offices, hotels, and unfortunately, Wawa gas stations
Mhm.
in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I remember, like, right in the beginning, I was like, you know what? Like, everybody's going around trying to find all these placements, and we're with these kids. Like, I kid you not, Michael, I was with each of these kids about 18 hours a day.
Mhm.
And so I said, let me just start having conversations with them, figure out who they are, who are they, before, we got involved.
Mhm.
And slowly but surely, we started getting all of those children back to their families of origin, those people who they're connected with.
Mhm.
You know why? Because I went to the people who had the lived experience to find those results. But you know what? The only reason why I knew that is because people didn't come to me when I was in care. People didn't ask me, where did I want to go? Who did I get connected with? They just say, hey, we found you another foster home. They didn't say, like, are you connected with another teacher that you found in this home right here? Because this foster family has decided they're going to close their home, or they're going to move on, or X, Y, and Z. It was just, you know what? We found you another home. And I always said, you know what? I'm always going to make sure the people I served will always have a voice when they're like around me, working with me, like whatever it took. And that's what made the answer for children no longer sleeping in offices when I was in Pinellas County. Was I took the voices of each one of those children and said, who are you connected with? Okay, a coach, okay, the pastor, okay, like, and just continually did it. And within 93 days, each one of those children were no longer sleeping in offices, hotels, Wawa gas stations, or moving night to night. It's because we started to do something different, and we used the voices of those impacted by the system and aligned it with those who made influential decisions based off of their lives. Because there's two different eyes, the impacted people and the influencers. I decided to make the same people who were impacted to be a part of the influencing. Like, I couldn't do it by myself. I couldn't do it alone. And what was crazy is, like, I always said, like, hey, just ask the children. Just ask the children. Just recently, locally, where I live at right now, I did some volunteer work with the local community-based care. And they had 17 children who were sleeping in hotels or were going night to night. Not all of them were sleeping in hotels, but one or the other. And I said, hey, let's just start having these conversations with them. I'm going to go to them and just be like, hey, look, like, I have no benefit of whether you sleep in the office or not. Like, I'm just here to have a conversation to help, be an ally alongside you, because I grew up in the same system, and because, just like you said, like that peer that I used to grow up in foster care, and now they're in it, I was able to influence conversations that they said, this person's not going to talk to you. This child doesn't speak this child's going to probably cuss you out. This child's going to do this. And I said, okay, whatever. And I would sit down and say, hey, my name is Victor. I grew up in foster care, just like you. I just hope you don't have to grow up in it. And right at that moment, they just like understand, I understand what they're going through. And they're like, well, what can you exactly help me with? I can help you with helping me find you some people to get you out of here.
Yeah.
And then we have those conversations, and once again, it happens. And it's not because I was a practitioner for that part of it. It's because I had lived experience, because I was a peer that was impacted by those same systems. Once again, the voices of those who have to be resilient. We're not resilient by choice, Michael. Resiliency doesn't come because people elected to be resilient. Resiliency because the only way to continue to move forward and to continue to live is to do that. And those who unfortunately have to make the other decision and sometimes end up taking their own lives because the system doesn't listen to their voices or doesn't allow them to speak out or to like make it through or to have a different alternative or different view of what their life could be. I think that's what's different. It's I have my graduation actually this upcoming Sunday, and every time I have a graduation, I think about, man, like the fact that it's so rare for people that have had similar experiences to make it through this.
Well,
like it baffles me every time, because I'm like, well, what are we doing differently? The fact that there's a 8 times as large percentage of people who have entered foster care in prison than there are in college. That should speak something to our system. One of the things that I've been very interested in, and I hope to like plant the ideas with someone, hopefully someone who's even listening to this podcast, is that if we really want to do co-design and elevate the voices of lived experience, it cannot just be the general population who is outside of the prison system. We have to find those people who experience foster care, who are inside of the prisons, inside of the jails, and say, what could have been different to prevent you from entering inside of here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what could the foster care system have done differently to prevent you from coming here? And I really wonder what their answers will be, because I don't know. I don't even know if I've never read anything on it. I don't even know if there's even research around it. Like, people have really taken time to say, like, what could have been done differently. What we hear is, 70% of youth who've been in foster care will be arrested by the age of 26.
Mm-hmm.
What we hear is 20% of the prison population is those who've been in foster care. Like, crazy, like, statistics. And then on the other side of it, 3% of them will graduate from college.
Yeah.
When we look at the statistics that say, like, those that will be in a morgue before they reach the age of 25, like, and then you put other marginalized things on top of it. Right now we're on a call with two Black men, right?
Right.
Who've experienced the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you put that on top of the other stressors of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I would really love to see a co-design process that really finds a way to integrate the voices of those who are in systems that aren't just success. Because I've also tried to take steps back from being on advisor groups or leadership conversations as a person with lived experience, or as the leader for the lived experience, whatever they're trying to bring to the table, but try to lean into my practitioner, but also that safe space when they bring somebody with lived experience on.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'm like, well, we don't need just the people with bachelor's degrees on this. We don't just need people who are enrolled in college on this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need just the people who are working on this. We need the ones who are struggling. We need the ones who unfortunately didn't make it out to the societal outcomes that we would wish on them. Like, those are the kind of things that, like, we need if we really want to say what can prevent them, what can preserve families. Like, that's what really takes us to a state of prevention. Another thing that takes us to prevention is truly addressing the trauma of those who've experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
Because then, you know what? Now, whenever I have my child, like, and I just, like, I can tell you, like, I just had my daughter born in January of this year. And the first thing that I thought about was, what do I need to do to make sure my child does not enter the system?
Mm-hmm.
Because I am a third generational foster child. The buck has to stop here. And then now I'm making a move, leaving Florida to go to Maryland. And I said, man, I knew Florida's laws and knew how to argue it here if anybody ever tried me. Now I've got to get ready to, like, learn Maryland's laws and understand what can I do if somebody ever tries to, like, have an investigation, or if I have to, like, try to, like, fight a removal. And mind you, I think I'm gonna be an amazing parent, but the fact that the proximity and the chances of my child re-entering care is higher. We talk about, like, prevention. That's the way to do prevention. We know so many of us who have fathers and mothers and cousins and all this who have somehow trickled into the system.
Yeah.
Well, what can we do differently? What we can do differently is truly invest. I'm not one to traditionally believe in, like, universal basic income, but, like, there are key indicators that we can say, you know what, because this person has this, we want to talk about ACE scores and all this kind of stuff, but nothing that we do really, except saying, hey, you've had all these adverse childhood experiences. Man, that sucks.
Nah.
But what are you going to do about it as a system? What are we going to do about it to transform this? What are we going to do to make sure the next generation doesn't have this amount of ACEs? Because if I have an ACE of 8, my child should not have an ACE of 8.
Mm-hmm.
We should find a way to make sure we prevent my child having an ACE of 8.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we transform systems. That's how we use the resilient voices. Because, Michael, you and I know that there's a lot of us in our spaces who are working in silos in different spaces and different organizations and in different companies and different firms and different government structures and government leadership positions to hopefully create a system that's no longer a system, but a community.
Yeah.
That goes back to that concept of it takes a village. You
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think it can happen, right? And you and I, like, what people on this call would probably think is we've had all these different kind of conversations, but this is the first time you and I have actually really talked outside of just commenting on each other's Facebook posts and LinkedIn posts and, like, messaging here and there. Like,
Mm-hmm. I
but
tell people all the time, like I know a lot of people that like I have never sat across the table from this person, but all it took was, look, I've been through it, you've been through it. All right, let's connect. And how can we share? Because we've crossed paths many different ways. We've crossed paths, through similar connections. One person I've had on here is Scout.
yeah,
Scout has told me great things. I'm like, well, I gotta get this Victor on here. We gotta sit down and talk, about some stuff, and I jokingly say, there's a couple of people that I will go somewhere and speak, and they just had left. I was like, I just miss you, I just miss you. But it's crazy because I was joking with someone, and I was like, at the end of the day, I could travel around this country and every state that I go to and say, hey, I need a place to crash tonight. Is
yeah,
there anyone with lived experience that can just offer me, a couch or, offer me, and in every state
mm-hmm,
in the United States,
mm-hmm,
I could find somebody. And that's why I believe that we have hope to change the system. That's why I believe, because it's so many of us that want to be there, want to support, and because we can't find that village outside of us, we become that village for each other. I was just scrolling through because I'm part of all these different groups, and I'm not gonna expose nobody, but as an individual, they were like, hey man, I'm homeless. I'm just trying to get some food tonight. Somebody was like, where you at? I'm gonna send you something, like, matter of fact, or you got somewhere to stay. Let me help, let me help you get here. And it's because we lack without, and we've, tried and what have you within these different sectors, and no one has showed up, that we have had to be that for each other.
yeah,
And it's that tenacity that when I become a father, I'm gonna instill that,
yeah,
in my child. And it's
yeah,
that you're gonna instill and into your daughter,
yeah,
because there has not been a pathology that has led us outside of the system. And our pathologies before us have led us into the system because
yeah,
generational cycles,
yeah,
and childhood trauma, and so many different things that we can speak about, within history that has, affected, BIPOC communities,
yeah,
but the cycle ends when we realize, okay, this is what all my parents had against them. And one thing that I teach and I talk about, it's not excusing the abuser, it's not excusing the fault that whatever happened or whatever, it's about understanding the root that led the individual to getting to that point. It takes, and I know it's different probably in California and Florida, and different things like that, because y'all got a different income bracket.
yeah,
But at least in Michigan, it takes two or more minimum wage jobs to be able to afford an apartment.
yeah,
But if you can afford, let me rephrase what I'm trying to say. To afford an apartment, it takes 2 to 3 minimum wage jobs. But if you got credit, ain't nothing, and you failed safely in life, you can get a house for significantly less
yeah,
and pay a mortgage,
yeah.
but majority of individuals have had their parents or someone mess up their credit before they even aged out,
You better
you
preach.
know.
You
You
better
know,
preach.
majority of individuals haven't had the opportunity to fail safe, so they've had to resort to unkindly skill sets that have led them to either being incarcerated or, led them to fraudulent activities, and when they finally do get their life together,
Yeah,
they like, I'm trying to get on a straight and narrow. I got, and for a huge percentage of us, it's when we have our kid in our struggle. We like, okay, my kid not about to be homeless with me. I got to get it together, you
Yeah.
know. And we find ourselves at so many roadblocks instead of there being resources saying, "Hey, you trying to get it together now? I believe in you. Let me help you out. Here's
Yeah.
my hand. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm going, I'm going look, I'm gonna hold you on. We're gonna get on this train and we're gonna keep going. There's so many doors being shut in front of people, and we wonder why the cycle keeps spinning. We wonder why it keeps twirling around. Is because we shut doors on people, and then we want to, and I'm gonna say it. We want to go and say go to this event because it be the same people.
Mm.
It's some CEOs out there, it's some church members out there. And some of these people that say like, I donated this, but when that one person came to your doorstep, what was you doing? So I just feel like, one thing that I preached about last season is bringing, the human aspect back into child welfare, and matter of fact, social welfare,
Yeah.
bringing back the aspect of when something goes wrong, the whole neighborhood has banded together to get this care package and sitting on that single parent's door, or that person's door when someone has lost their life, to help them and support them like, hey, I know you got to work. We'll watch your kid. We got you, like I remember days, and I remember, aspects of being in the ghetto, as we say, as we
Yeah.
say, where people banded together to make it through.
Yeah.
But we live in a society now where it's so self-centered. We are the reason why these cycles keep repeating itself.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful because there's a whole bunch of folks like me and you that's sick and tired
Sick and
of
tired of
being
being sick
sick
and
and tired
tired.
that wants to revolutionize and make things better.
Yeah.
Um, my next question, because I want to tie it back. My next question to you is: you spoke about doing a lot of advocacy, within Florida. That's your home state, what have you. Um, and I know you probably can talk for miles on this. You know, what would you share about your experience, working and being in Florida's child welfare, and what would you say as you're getting ready to transition to a new state? That things have shifted, or are they different? What is the temperature in Florida for child welfare? Let's go there.
Yeah. That Florida has had a lot of eyes on them on it just because we're privatized one. Um, and so it makes it very unique because not any no, I worked in four different community-based care organizations, uh, which meant four different leaderships, four different operating procedures, and you would think they're actually four different states based on how they run.
Wow.
Um, but it's beneficial at times. I'm not gonna say all the time, but at times because the problems in each one of those areas you knew because they like the way it was ran was this is our community's problem. This right here, and this is how we need to this is what we need to focus on. We don't need
Mhm.
to focus on the problem that the entire state is saying is a problem. We just need to focus on the problem that we know is our problem. So if it's we don't have enough dental providers for our children underneath the state Medicaid program, we need to figure out what are we going to do to make sure our children's medical, dental, and immunization needs are met here.
Mhm.
If over here it's children sleeping in offices, then what are we going to do over here to make this be the problem? If over here it's the fact that we don't keep children and families together, then we're going to work our best to figure out what does it mean to keep children and families together. If over here at 33705 in St. Petersburg, it's the highest area of removal, if we know that right here in this community, like we remove Black and brown children at a higher rate than anywhere else in the state of Florida, we need to figure out what resources we need to put in that community to make sure they don't trickle in.
Mhm.
And those are the kind of things that make me hopeful in Florida. And those there are also things that make me worried, right? It's
Mhm.
leaders who have not found a way to begin to succession plan.
Mhm.
And I'm not one to say make way for Generation X or anything like that. But I am a person who believes like it's like we have to succession plan or else the industry like we think it's broken right now. Like if we don't have a plan on where or who the next leaders are or how we prepare for the next era of what a child or and family well-being system looks like or operates like,
Mhm.
then we will continue to be in this broken system because we'll always be a reactive system instead of a proactive system. And we don't have to be that. We can say, you know what, we know that in 5 or 10 years, this is what's going to go on. We know that in 2 years, this person's probably going to retire. And it's time for us to be intentional
Mhm.
to make sure that we're preparing the next person to be ready to take the reins. And so that's one of the things that I I am worried about. Obviously, you know, as a state who we may have a presidential candidate or two presidential candidates technically from, you know, with uh, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. I think it's being intentional to make sure that child welfare doesn't get into the to the political fight
Yeah.
because the way that children and families live should never be a political conversation, right?
Mhm.
It should never have to affect the lives, regardless of who is in the White House or the State
Mhm.
House, or you know what I mean, or even in the governor's house,
Yeah.
mansion, right? I think those are the kind of things that like I worry about, but that's not just in Florida or in Maryland or
Yeah.
you know that's everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
so like I always worry when there is uh, a transition of power. So we say um, how that may affect the lives of families, right? And then I've also been on this huge uh, I don't know if it's a come to Jesus, but it's a come to something. It might be a come to Vic. Um, but one of the things I've been saying, because we call our system Department of Children and Families here,
Uh-huh.
um, and I said, well, why do we call it Department of Children and Families? You know, we say we want to keep families together, but we have already separated the child from the family just in our title. If we want to say we want to keep families together and strengthen families and strengthen communities, can we name it something else that doesn't separate the child from families? Even like one of the languages that the language barriers that I try to like break down now is I don't say the child and families as much. I try to say child and parents. Like
Mhm.
because the child is a unit inside of that family. That's why it's easy to
Right.
say it's National Adoption Month because it's not about the holistic of the family. It's about the experience of this of the child,
Mhm.
right? And so trying to like really be intentional because it affects me because when you said children and families, it made it easier for me to actually dislike and borderline hate my biological family,
Mhm.
even though I actually experienced no harm, like because I went in basically at birth,
Mhm.
right? But I hated my mom, I hated my dad, I hated like anything that had to do with my bio family.
Mhm.
Well, it's because it was designed to be that way. Like you're the child and the rest of your family, like they had to be horrible people.
Mhm.
But it like you know, and there are states who call them Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Like I'm like, why did we like decide to segment so much stuff? Because if we really want to be holistic and move it from a child welfare system to a family well-being system,
Yeah.
then we have to go back to the language and the jargon that we use even at the front door.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
and some people, you know, some people think I'm crazy every time I say it, but I'm like, no, you can't say you want families to stay together when your title separates them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just you know the administration of children and families. I mean, even at DC, you know, it's titled that, right? And so
Mhm.
how do we like begin to program our minds to see the family as a family? Is starting at even the way we introduce ourselves when we talk about our jobs.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so if I said every day, like I work at the administration of families, that's different because now I'm like, oh, I got to keep this like. But if I say the administration of children and families is, and I do this for children, I do this to help the parents. No, I do this to keep the families together or to strengthen the families.
Right.
And sometimes strengthen the family is unfortunately removing children.
Mhm.
You know, sometimes strengthen the family is giving the parents some time to really like focus on themselves so that way they can be a better parent whenever the child gets home or
Mhm.
wherever the permanency route ends up being, right? But if our long-term goal or what we truly believe in is that families belong together,
Yeah.
then how can we do it a different way? And so those are like the hopes for the future, those are the concerns for the future, those are the celebrations of the present, right? And so
Awesome, awesome. I truly appreciate that breakdown because I run in a lot of different sectors. I do federal work and then I do state work, and stuff like that. So, you can't help to hear, different things like, well, no, we ain't gonna talk about Florida, because like I'm pretty sure you've heard it as
every
well,
time people say that, people
So
say that every
just
time.
I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know. So let me ask somebody who do know that can break it down for me and the audience, so that we can all be informed, and personally, like, we I've done it at one point, we put too much blame on the individuals who come into this field really wanting to make change, you know, but unfortunately, because of the processes and sometime to train it, people veer off, and we had the same conversation about the police force and stuff like that. I don't believe any police officer comes and wants to be a bad police officer, but when you are in an inherently racist system or what have you, which is the same thing to say for our child welfare system nationwide. This was built off of, systemic racism to police, black and brown communities,
Yeah,
you can't help when you are still running off of those same policies and bylaws and procedures, but we're putting new policies on that also still resembles the same policy, and we call it something new, just with a different name, Department of Children and Family.
yeah,
It still trains individuals to work as so.
yeah,
But I want to be mindful of your time because I know me and you could talk for a long period of time
yes.
about these differences. But I want to ask you as we get ready to close, what advice would you like to leave here?
You know, um, there's a lot. So I'll try to be short. Um, when you asked me what quote, it was whatever it takes. Um, and it rings true in so many different ways for me. It definitely did whenever I worked in Pinellas County with the kids who were sleeping in the office. I was like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make sure they don't have to sleep in offices. But it it allowed me to um, work in a different way. Whatever it takes to transform policies and procedures, whatever it takes to keep this family together, whatever it takes to get this family back together, whatever it takes to get this child adopted, whatever it takes to make sure this child transitions to adulthood, not because they turned 18, but transitions into adulthood successfully in the way that they want to be, right? Like whatever it takes. If it means, I'm going to be driving this kid every morning at 7:30 in the morning to make sure that they get to their college campus on time, then I'll do that too. Like
Mhm.
whatever it takes. Um, and what's beautiful is um, most recently that same program where I was like, I literally said it almost every day for about everything because I literally like it actually is part of the reason that I just kept on moving because there are days I was like, this is crazy. Um, but they just named one of the boats that they bought after it, like whatever it's called, the whatever it takes. And
Mhm.
it made me smile because like, you know what? Like, if there's not anything else I left there, I'm happy that that's left there.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's the mindset um, that we have to get into, or professionals have to get into, who are the influencers, um, in order to say what does it take in order to get there? Because they ask that a lot. Like, what does it take for us to get there? What does it take to do this? And oftentimes they're asking it, but they're not willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Just what does it take? And I want to encourage our leaders and advocacy groups, our leaders that work behind the scenes that we don't know about, who don't have the privilege of being at tables, who don't have the privilege of being on podcasts or leading podcast conversations that transform conversations. The leaders who speak to governors or to speak to legislatures in regards to budgets, that it's up to each and every one of us, the community member down the street, who like who's worried about it, right? Like, one, and not to talk politics, but one of my favorite things that happened in, I think, 2018, when Governor DeSantis and Andrew Gillum ran. Andrew Gillum, he had this little mantra that he repeated that his grandmother said, and it was, bring it home for the little boy down the street who God knows what's going to happen to that boy. Like, bring it home, bring the education home, bring this home. And it was all of this, right? And really what I heard was like, bring your community back home, bring your knowledge back home, bring your strengths back home, right? And if we get back to like, you know what, like, my neighbor over here can't read, I'm gonna spend some time teaching him how to read. Neighbor over here, you know what, like, I could tell you when my dad had a stroke, our neighbors in their community were bringing the garbage can down the road, making meals for us. Like, I mean, and there were 7 of us. Like that's the kind of community uplifting we have to get back into, because it's not just the system's responsibility to get us to a place where there's a family well-being system, because unfortunately it's not their role in our society. Their role is to protect children from abuse and neglect. Like it is, and it's our role as community members to make sure that we provide our neighbors, our family members, the resources and the skills in order to ensure that like they're strong enough to withstand more battles than not.
Definitely.
That's my TED talk for the day, I guess.
No, I truly appreciate that. One thing you mentioned there in that, in that advice and the tidbit, and them gems you just dropped, is what I get, and correct me if I'm wrong, it shouldn't take a crisis. It shouldn't take, a hurricane, it shouldn't take, an epidemic. It shouldn't take, a natural disaster for us to see the importance of taking care of each other.
Yeah.
You mentioned something, you sent it to me in the comments, so y'all didn't see it. So when y'all hear, I'm gonna say it for everybody, but it should, having a village should not be, a privilege, that sort of thing. And in so many aspects, I've been talking about this at my job. We don't realize how many people do not have the opportunity because of going through the system, because of whether being homeless for whatever factor, but all these different risk factors that we have within this nation, the opportunity to fail safely within their young adulthood, to be able to make it to that mindset, to be able to make rational and critical decisions. We have all the data in the world that shows us that, trauma stunts the brain, and you need time to heal, you need time to recover. We have all these different people who, went through COVID, went through, high school shootings, went through the child welfare system, and we're expecting these people at 18 to be A-okay and ready to be an adult. And not saying it, and I'm not, saying that these individuals may not be, because with resiliency and survival mode, you can do whatever, but a huge percentage, are in crisis mode within their lives, and they are searching to understand themselves, but also understand what has happened to them. And because there is no guidance, there isn't an opportunity for them to take a day off because they have to work to make sure that their bills are paid. There isn't an option for them to say, I don't want to be a parent today. And that's a realistic thing when you are by yourself out here parenting and you don't have a support system and depression is seeking in, and you are already a young parent that didn't even have a parent. You're like, I wish I had a support system. I wish I had somebody. And you find yourself having your kid removed when you had that one day that
Yeah.
you just did not feel like being a parent, but you did not have the opportunity to fail safely because you didn't have a village. So, when I hear you saying, whatever it takes, it also reminds me of Degrassi, the song, whatever it takes, the theme song says, whatever it takes to make it through. I think about that and, your story that you shared, and the experiences you shared today, and also, my own story, we've made it through, but the fight has not ended. It's a lot of us like me and you and several other advocates and, role models and figures throughout this nation with lived experience that we want. It's not just enough for us to make it through.
Yeah.
I
It's
want to
not.
see the next generation make it and the generation after that make it through, you know, and I would even go as further with minimum scars,
Yeah.
you know. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, to hear your story, to hear you speak and share. Any last comments? And this is really a space. You got a song coming out, EP, an album, a book, whatever you want to, leave. I know you left some, but any last comments you want to just shout out? Any great things you doing, or whatever.
Yeah, I do have a book coming out soon. I
Okay.
haven't selected the date um, yet because I think like I'm a person who believes like everything has to have a meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the book is finished finally. It took 6 months, and I haven't really decided, but originally was deciding at first to uh, release it during foster care month. And so I was like, man, I'll release it in May. But I've recently becoming more conflicted with releasing it in May, so I'll probably release it in June.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I also want to like send a message that I'm more than just foster care.
Mm.
And so I think that's like I probably wait till literally June 1st. So um, yeah, that's like I said, like everything has to have a meaning for me,
I
and I
feel it.
I,
I
I
feel
think
it.
really deep, and I think I think I'm like at some point I'm tired of just like the system making decisions, right? Because I didn't choose May, they
Mm.
chose, like you know, and so I'm pretty sure it'll be the beginning of June because
Awesome.
that's where
Awesome.
I've been sitting at with it lately.
Well, I appreciate that, so you
And you're the
guys
first to
stay
hear
tuned.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So y'all heard it first, it be our little secret, you know.
You gotta listen to hear the secret. There you go.
Oh man, but no, y'all stay tuned. Look out, for Victor. He's doing so many wonderful things. Um, connect with him. When that book release, you go show him some love and some support. Definitely, so we can continue on this journey to do great things. As I end, season 3, episode 2. Um, I'm just reminded by, the support that you guys have shown me, the admiration. And I just want to say thank you, you know, because it's not just me being able to provide this platform to share with other lived experience people, or not even individuals with lived experience, but stakeholders, community leaders, and so forth. It's us providing this platform together and hosting a space that is neutral, that we can talk about what happened, we can talk about what's wrong, and what's good. in hopes that someone hears this, and not just someone hearing this, but also someone takes this, a foster parent takes this and implements some different changes within their homes. A legislator, hears this and like, wow, I did not know this is all what's going on. How can I make it better? And so forth. This is what this space is meant for, and I'm glad to be able to be here with another season. Didn't know I was gonna make it, but God made a way. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys out there that continues to share encouraging words, not only to me, but also to the guests I've had, on here, continuing to support them and whatever their endeavors are. That being said, yeah, I know, COVID and all these other different things are still out there, So like if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, put your mask on. Don't go in the grocery store touching on everything, and then realizing you might need to go lay down. Go chill out, go take a self-care day, relax, keep the hand sanitizer on deck, and just take some time to relax, because it takes all of us to take care of each other. We learned our lesson through COVID with, and I'm gonna be real with selfishness, and different things like that, so let's learn our lessons from history and do better as a people. Also I want to mention that we all know somebody that we either was mad at or some reason, we haven't reached out or what have you, but we all know somebody that's dealing with a lot in their life right now. I want to challenge each and everybody that's listening to this episode, whenever you're listening, to check on that one person, or if it's more than one person, go check on all 20 or 25 of them, but just say, how you doing? Are you okay? And listen, not to respond, but to actually hear them, you know. Um, and do that, because mental health is serious, and there's a lot of people who's feeling alone. There's a lot of people who feel like there's nobody that truly, genuinely cares. And, I care about it. If ain't nobody else care, look, I love you and I care about you. I'm in Michigan, wherever you at, just know Michael cares about you, and I love you, but we have to do better. We talked about being that village for one another. It doesn't matter where you at, you can be that support, and just tell somebody that I love you, I care about you, how can I help? You know. With that being said, I hope you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Until next time.